I feel like everyone who watches a lot of movies, and particularly people who collect a lot of movies, have certain directors that they absolutely love, and they watch every movie that they do, and they have personal favorites amongst those, but genuinely, you tend to generally like everything they do. And then there are other directors who maybe really aren't quite to your taste, but they are talented, and there are some individual films in their repertoire that you really, really enjoy. And the latter is where Tarantino falls for me. I love some of his movies, but in general, he's not really a style that I super enjoy, and I don't like everything he does. So we're going to take a look at my Tarantino collection, which, even though he's still a working director, I'm kind of calling it complete right now because it likely is. I haven't really been into a lot of his more recent stuff, and unless he goes and does Kill Bill 3, I'm probably not going to bother with a lot of his movies from here on out. Just really not a favorite overall, but there are a few of his movies that I do really enjoy, some of his older movies. So we're going to get into those today. We'll start off with DVDs, kind of the core of that collection. So we'll go through the DVDs first, move into the other formats then. Starting off with this triple feature, we have Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction, and Jackie Brown. Jackie Brown is one that I feel like is one of his better films, and it just doesn't get the attention as some of the other ones that he's done around the same time. I mean, the other two here, Pulp Fiction, aside from Kill Bill, is probably his most famous film, the kind of film where even if you've never seen a Quentin Tarantino film, you might recognize the name and know what the movie is. And Reservoir Dogs is one of the essential movies that big fans of his, fans that like were the Quentin Tarantino is one of their favorite directors of all time, will point to this as one of their favorites typically, or as a good starting point to watch one of his movies. That's one that I always, in talking to people before I'd seen too many of his movies, I'd say back in the late 90s, early 2000s, where I'd only seen a handful of his movies. That was one that was always, fans of his would always say, check out Reservoir Dogs on VHS or whatever. So this is a great little collection of some of his more essential movies. And moving into that, one of my favorites, because of the way it does a complete genre twist, is his team up with Robert Rodriguez in From Dusk Till Dawn. And I just love how this starts off as a completely different movie before turning into a vampire flick. It's great. It does, though, one thing I don't like about it, it does highlight one of the things I dislike about many of Quentin Tarantino's movies. I do not like him as an actor. As a director, he has a lot of style and a lot of vision, and even in movies where it's just really not my type of thing that I would normally like, I can still see and appreciate what he's doing in it. He's one of those directors that has a lot of talent, and I do love how he really is what I would consider to be like a video store director, who so much of what he does is pulled from or references so many great films, and not in, and they really are just references in a way. There's something where you take something where you have to already be familiar with those works most of the time to really understand the reference within the film, and it just is done so well. It's someone who you can always tell that he's someone who loves cinema, who's seen endless numbers of movies. I love listening to him in interviews because he can just talk forever and just rattle off facts about so many different genres of film, and he's just very knowledgeable, and he's fascinating to listen to. So even though his movies are not always to my taste, I really enjoy and appreciate his knowledge and his passion of film and the way he directs things, but I don't like him as an actor ever in anything that he's in, and that's one flaw here. Like, he does an okay job, but I don't know, I've never been a fan of him as an actor within his movies, whether it's a small part in like Pulp Fiction or a larger part here. I always felt like, it would be better give him to someone else. But Harvey Keitel does a great job, Juliette Lewis. George Clooney, I really like in this because it's something so different, something I don't see him in normally. It's just not the type of movie that when you say George Clooney that I expect, and he really does a great job. And Selma Hayek as well, I mean, great in this movie. But yeah, this is a fun, really like just pulpy action movie. You can see Rodriguez, you can see his style in there as well. Robert Rodriguez does a lot of movies that have a very similar vibe to this. So just overall, this is just a very fun picture, and I just love if you're going into it not knowing what the movie's about, I love how it just does that genre twist, and it does it so well, and it doesn't seem ridiculous and out of nowhere. It's just a lot of fun. Another one that is a lot of fun. The first movie of his I'd actually had ever seen. Yeah, I'd heard about him, but something like Pulp Fiction was not the first movie I saw of his. The first Quentin Tarantino movie I ever saw was a rental from Blockbuster. I saw Kill Bill Volume 1. He was just a director I had not been exposed to before, but soon after this came out on DVD is when I rented it just based on the cover art and a preview that I had seen. And so this was the first thing I actually ever saw of his, and went back and watched some older stuff. But yeah, Kill Bill Volume 1, just fantastic. And this is one of the best examples of what I was talking about, how it's a movie full of different mixes of styles and references to so many different pop culture things over the years, whether it's comic books, whether it's different forms of music, whether it's different movies, things from like Lady Snowblood, and just all kinds of stuff in here. It's packed in here in such a fantastic way. Even just from her outfit and everything. It's such a great homage to greats of cinema, but it also feels like its own thing. It's not something where so many times that can fall into parody of those other things that it's constantly pulling influence from, and his work never seems to. It's just little loving nods to other things within an original work. And Kill Bill Volume 1, fantastic, a lot of fun. And then Kill Bill Volume 2, and I mean, you really have to obviously watch them both together. It's one movie, kind of split in two parts really, but they do have very different feels, 1 and 2. And I know there's always, and there forever will be two camps of which is the better part, Volume 1 or Volume 2, because they are very different in tone, and they work well together though. It doesn't feel like an abrupt shift. Like sometimes when movies do this and they are a little bit more different in tone like these are, sometimes it feels like they're disjointed, but it doesn't feel that way at all. I really enjoy Kill Bill, so I have that on DVD here. I actually have 2 sets. Love that. Great. I would love to see a Kill Bill Volume 3. That would be fantastic. It's been enough time now. I think that would be great. But yeah, just these are great movies, great supporting cast, and just this is a little bit more of a fun action flick in a way, and Kill Bill Volume 2 is a little more story heavy, a little bit more slower paced, and does work well together. Good ones. And then we have on LaserDisc Reservoir Dogs, one that was just kind of free, and a lot that I had. It wasn't one I particularly went to pick up, but great piece. And I think one of the things I like about it, despite within 5 minutes of this video going up and seeing a picture of this is going to be comments about the movie this is based off of from Hong Kong, but just talking about this movie in particular, I think one of the highlights of it for me is his style of dialogue. It really stands out in here, and that's something that carries on into a lot of his other work. And of course there's so many actors in here that he uses in a lot of his work, particularly in the 90s. People like Harvey Keitel and Steve Buscemi, and just on and on. There's so many people that are kind of like regulars that this was... I think this was the first movie I saw of his after the Kill Bill Volume 1, because I had friends who had this and really enjoyed that. But I think on VHS it might have been, or DVD at the time, but widescreen edition LaserDisc. And then one LaserDisc that I was actually really looking for, it's a gatefold, so let me take it out of the sleeve here. We have my favorite Quentin Tarantino movie, Pulp Fiction. And that is such a stereotypical answer to what is your favorite Tarantino movie. It really is, but it is, so I can't pretend it's not. This is my favorite movie of his. I think this, as far as showcasing his style and what he does, this is one of the best examples. Still is to this day, and it is one that I've always enjoyed so much. And I think that, this also has had, by far, out of any of these movies, the greatest influence on other directors, on cinema in general, going into the late 90s, early 2000s, especially indie films. There are so many that try and pull off their version of Pulp Fiction, and most of them don't seem to quite get it right. The nonlinear storytelling, the telling the story through lots of different almost enclosed little individual stories, vignettes that all connect together into this larger picture, and they aren't necessarily told in linear order. It very rarely works out well, and here it works out perfectly. It's never seems disjointed, never seems confusing, nothing ever seems out of place. And I think one of the reasons why I love this, aside from its fantastic sense of style, brilliant performances by just about everyone in here. I mean, John Travolta is great. It's great in this. Samuel L. Jackson, Uma Thurman. Just go through the whole gamut. Everyone does a fantastic job. Aside from all of that, I think one of the reasons why I like it so much is because it's one that I can rewatch so frequently, because all those little individual segments, even though they're all part of a larger whole, every one of them stands up on their own, and I think everyone's going to have different favorites of these little individual stories within the larger picture. But I think what makes it so rewatchable for me is that every one of those can be fascinating on its own, and maybe if I don't want to sit and watch the whole movie, I could pick a favorite little chapter from it and watch that and really enjoy it, and watch them like The Boxer or whatever. Like, who knows, they all kind of work in their own little way and come together into this larger whole and just make a great movie. So I really wanted that on LaserDisc, was happy to grab that, and that's also the only film of his that I have on Blu-ray with a ton of extra features. This is a really good release. And there's, of course, the Criterion and LaserDisc and a bunch of other releases, but I was happy and cool with this Japanese gatefold that I had, and then, the Blu-ray copy, and of course it's in that DVD set or whatever. Pulp Fiction, even though it is the stereotypical answer to what's your favorite Quentin Tarantino film, that's my favorite of his, and I can't see anything ever surpassing that he, a project of his. Really enjoy that. So that is my look at my Quentin Tarantino collection. He's such a bizarre director for me, because, as I said, he's not necessarily a favorite of mine, but there are some individual movies of his, particularly in the 90s, that I do genuinely enjoy, and I really enjoy listening to him in interviews, and I really appreciate his genuine love for film and his style, but not necessarily someone who's always up my alley. But some really good stuff here. I'd love to see Kill Bill 3. That I would actually be into, and Pulp Fiction, that's always going to be my favorite Quentin Tarantino film.